look, we've just been discussing the lefties, of course, in the US because they just seem to really be struggling to come to terms.
So bad.
That's actually probably a light term. They're they're not coping, let's be honest, with Trump's victory. And so much so that Ivy League schools across the United States have cancelled classes, postponed exams, and told students they could colour in with crayons and even offered them milk and cookies to cope. Yes, you heard that correct. Nothing like a warm glass of milk to soothe your soul. Joining us now is journalist and commentator in the US, Brad Palumbo. Brad, really great to see you. The Ivy League, really good to see they're putting this billions of money that they get every year to good use to help students with this difficult time.
It's absolutely pathetic. These are supposed to be America's elite education universities and our higher education system, and they're treating their students like toddlers, canceling classes. I would be furious. I remember I was a college student back in 2016, and my professors decided to have sessions to talk about our feelings instead of teaching class. And guys, college in the US is insanely expensive. I was like, excuse me, sir, I'm paying like $300 for this hour. Maybe you could actually teach about the topic you're paid to teach. I think if you're a professor and you're unable to do your job because you're just so adversely affected mentally by an election not going your way, you need to get a grip and maybe go back to teaching kindergarten rather than full-grown adults. It's condescending and it's pathetic, but it's so just emblematic of the cultural rot that's turning American elite institutions into an absolute joke.
Well, Brad, I totally agree with everything you've said, but the lefty meltdowns, they just haven't stopped. This woman, for example, seems genuinely troubled.
I just want to let you all know that if you need to talk, I will be available to talk. Have a bottle of wine, an entire bottle of wine. It's okay. I don't know what to say, right? But I can't really say to get better because it's going to be hard.
Brad, we make fun of lefty meltdowns, but a lot of these people are seriously troubled. What responsibility do the Democrats and the progressive media bear for the mental problems some of these people are clearly now experiencing?
Yeah, on one level it's funny, but on another level I do genuinely feel bad for these people, the people screaming and ranting and freaking out in their cars and crying on TikTok. And I agree with you. Ultimately, the media and then social media activists who post extremely misleading content, they're to blame because they've basically convinced these people that Donald Trump is going to do a lot of things that he isn't going to do. I mean, I saw a video of a woman saying that lesbians are going to be shot on sight in Donald Trump's America. And I'm like, that's news to me because he's literally pro-gay marriage and nothing of the sort happened from 2016 to 2020. I also got spammed with ads here in Michigan about how Donald Trump is going to ban IVF fertility treatments while he was actually campaigning on making them taxpayer funded and available to all. So I blame the disconnect, the totally misleading and inaccurate media coverage, the constant hyperbole and exaggeration from social media activists that scared people to the point where they're melting down. And on one level, I have to admit, it is funny. Their tears are delicious in some ways. But in another sense, they're victims. Like, they've been lied to, and they're experiencing so much distress as a result.
Yeah, it is frightening, actually. And I've got to say as well, Brad, the media, MSNBC in particular, they continue to outdo themselves. This time, they've actually interviewed a psychiatrist who's offered this advice on how to deal with a family member who voted for Donald Trump.
So if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who you know have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me.
Look, Brad, clearly the budget for guests at MSNBC, it's quite low because this is real scraping the barrel type of stuff. What sort of ridiculous advice is that? Shun your relatives. Don't talk to them if you voted for Trump.
It's really sad. It's really pathetic and toxic advice. I mean, these people are so close-minded, yet they're supposed to be the open-minded, progressive ones in our society. You should not cut off otherwise healthy relationships with your family and friends just because of political disagreements. And actually, that's really tragic and insulting to those of us who maybe don't have parents or siblings in our lives, or have lost loved ones and would kill to have them back, but would never dream of just ripping up those relationships over differences in who you check off at the ballot box. And it's funny, they're talking about voting against our livelihoods. Honey, if we applied that logic, we could cut you guys off for voting to close our schools and close our businesses for years and all sorts of other things and tax us out of existence. But we don't do that. I mean, that's just... They simplify our politics down in the most trite ways, and then they act like anybody who doesn't agree with their infinite wisdom must somehow be evil. In reality, the world is complicated, and good people can disagree on things sometimes. And I just can't believe somebody would go up there on cable news with their full chest and try to break up people's families. If that's what you're doing with your life professionally, you need to take a long look in the mirror, because what a terrible way to spend your life's work.
Well, speaking of people taking a long look in the mirror, political pundits and pollsters are trying to work out why they didn't see the Trump landslide coming. One pollster told CNN that voters simply weren't rational.
And the keys, because the keys depend upon a rational, pragmatic electorate deciding based on governance whether the incumbent party should get 4 more years. Elon Musk is, I don't know how many hundreds of billions he has. He has been the director of misinformation. 2 billion views of his spreading of disinformation, not just about the economy, but about immigrants, about minorities. We've never seen disinformation at this scale.
So, Brad, the pollsters got the result wrong because they didn't factor in Elon Musk's misinformation.
No, he's just trying to cover himself up because he got embarrassed. His predictions were totally wrong, and so were some other pollsters. I don't think most people saw a Trump landslide coming, but blaming misinformation or disinformation is absurd. Immigration crisis at our border, not misinformation. Inflation that bankrupted American families, not misinformation. Chaos in the world around us, a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan, not misinformation. People know what's going on in their lives. I mean, Elon Musk posting inaccurate memes to Twitter sometimes is not changing people's votes or somehow this shadow conspiracy that undercut the polls, which doesn't even make sense. Are we supposed to believe that people don't tell their real opinions to pollsters because of Elon Musk's misinformation? His theory does not even make sense. But more broadly, they want to blame misinformation or disinformation because it's a pathetic cope. It's a way of refusing and denying their actual culpability and their failure to offer Americans a sane and attractive alternative as the Democratic Party. It's an abysmal failure, and it's something they really should reckon with. But don't hold your breath waiting for them to do that, because you might pass out.
Well, Brad Palumbo, thank you so much for helping us make sense of America. We appreciate your time tonight.